Xdefiant has been one of my most anticipated games for 2024, so my expectations were pretty high. Does the game meet those lofty expectations, and is it any fun to play? Let's get into it. Xdefiant is a highly engaging run and gun shooter that plays very much like classic Call of Duty games such as Black Ops 4. You won't find any kill streaks, tactical sprint or bloated class creation here. The overall game pace is quick, matches usually have plenty of gunfights and the time to kill is fast. Currently there are no kill cams, which enables for an almost instant respawn in most game modes, which is absolute bliss. So this is all very promising, but what about the weapons? In most cases the news keeps getting better. Not since Modern Warfare 2 2009 have I had this much fun sniping. The bolt-action M44 is a one-shot kill in most cases, with high potential for quick scoping, and is even viable up close if you've got the dexterity. Clearly other players agree, because the gun mix in most matches often includes at least a few snipers. Assault rifles, as you'd expect, are the most commonly used weapon class in the game, and each of them are good fun to use. I will note that the M16 is overpowered at the moment. There is a good mix of SMGs in the game, covering for all kinds of preferences without having too many to choose from. SMGs, as you'd expect, are good at short range, but they drop off big time at medium to long range in my opinion, so you won't be challing ARs at distance like in some more recent Call of Duty games. LMGs and marksman rifles are viable, which is great, but they don't get much use. In the right hands, the marksman rifles can be absolutely lethal. Pistols are decent and provide a much faster movement speed while handling compared to main weapons, so use this to your advantage. Sadly, shotguns just aren't viable at the moment due to super close range damage fall off. Unless you get in super close range, they absolutely suck. Class creation is pretty streamlined. One main weapon, one sidearm, one throwable, along with any attachments you may want to apply to your weapon of choice. There is a reasonable amount of attachments to cater for different weapon builds, but thankfully not a whole junkyard like Modern Warfare 3. Unlocking guns only requires completing easy challenges, and weapon attachments only require repeat use of weapons. No convoluted unlock requirements thankfully, and they unlock at a reasonable pace too. Pre-match, players can pick from one of 5 factions which are all notable Ubisoft franchises. Each faction comes with their own unique ultimate ability and choice of 2 main abilities. For the most part these abilities are useful, but standouts seem to be the mag barrier ability from the Phantoms faction, along with the Intel suit ability from the Echelon faction. As ultimate abilities go, I think the clear best are sonar goggles from the Echelon faction and AGs from the Phantom faction. When sonar goggles is activated, all enemy players are highlighted like enemies from Superhot, and can be taken down with one shot from your pistol. Phantom's Ultra provides a plasma shield and electro shattergun for close combat. I've seen both ultimate abilities used to devastating effect in some matches, so this probably indicates they need a bit of taming. I usually get 1 to 2 uses of my ultimate ability per match, so it pays to hold on to them for maximum playmaking impact. It was super refreshing to play an FPS that only had standard sprint with no tactical sprint in sight. The slide ability was pretty slow, which reduced the chances of this mechanic being abused or being cheap to use. The game's audio design isn't anything special, but I did notice that the sound effect when you get a kill is super useful. Due to this sound effect being super clear and pronounced, I've been able to use this sound cue to flip my aim from one target to another very quickly for double kills. So other than a few tweaks here and there, the gameplay of Xdefiant is really good. It was cool how the available factions are made up from different Ubisoft franchises, but this also provides a benefit for gameplay, since each faction has a distinctive aesthetic which massively helps with player identification on the map. Available factions are from Far Cry 6, Ghost Recon, Splinter Cell, The Division and Watch Dogs 2. The latter requires purchasing the Season Pass or can be unlocked via gameplay as well. I was happy to see that map voting is included in the game, plus matchmaking didn't take long at all, so I could get to gunning noobs as soon as possible. I enjoyed playing on all of the maps included in the game, which makes a nice change. I will note that in the occupied game mode in particular, capture points have limited cover, which makes for better braking opportunities and little to no head glitching. The same also applies to other game modes too. Speaking of game modes, there are 5 to choose from. 4 out of the 5 I enjoyed playing, and 1 just wasn't quite as fun. Occupy, which is Xdefiant's name for Hardpoint, unsurprisingly plays exactly like Hardpoint. The only real difference to note is that capture zones seem pretty small. but I'm all in for this because it reduces the number of areas for players to hide in. Domination is good fun, but some spawn locations could use work as spawn camping was easily possible. Escort requires your team to push an objective through the map towards the enemy team's base. If you've played Overwatch, it plays exactly like Escort from that game. It's a fun game mode if your team is bothering to push the objective, but can be pretty stale if your teammates have decided it's TDM instead. Zone control is pretty interesting. Teams take turns to capture or defend. The attacking team must capture 5 zones. The more players on the zone, the faster the capture. There is no limit to lives, but there is a round time limit. The mode plays very similar to Control from Modern Warfare 3, but the capture progress does not regress. I had some good fun pushing the objectives in this mode, and can imagine it's very tense in Ranked. Hotshot is the last of the 5 game modes and my least favourite. In a nutshell, it's kill confirmed with a twist. The twist being that as players collect multiple tags they become the hotshot, which in gameplay terms means significantly increased movement, and collecting further tags as the hotshot rewards extra tags. The mode plays fine, it's just all over the place with little predictability, which I personally like. All in all, the initial 5 modes are good fun to play, but there is a rather large absence for a competitive focused game. That absence is Search and Destroy, which would be a great addition given that all other modes have respawns. It has confirmed to be in the works, it's just a shame it's not there at launch. The Xdefiant beta had some of the most bizarre default game settings I've seen in a long time, and this continued in the full release. Some of these settings include really high field of view with dependent aim down sights field of view, which made aiming down the sights feel bloody odd. Aim assist isn't very strong, so you've actually got to aim straight, unlike Call of Duty games which do too much of the aiming for you nowadays. That said, I was impressed that the game included settings such as reverse flashbang effect to save me from getting blinded, and since the beta, many additional controls options have been added. Settings are ultimately a player preference, and there's an abundance of options, so I can't complain. Overall, the game's UI is well designed and clear, which is great. Game performance seems solid on PlayStation 5. I played using the 120 frames per second option, which the game notes will drop resolution to maintain a high frame rate. However, the game's image quality is nice and clean with stable performance throughout my time playing. Graphically not pushing any boundaries, but stability is good. On the flip side, hit detection is an issue I've heard many reporting. I've had a few gunfights where I was sure I should have got the kill and the other player danced around the bullets. I'm exaggerating, but you get the point. Developers have acknowledged the issue and are working on a fix. Xdefiant's Battle Pass cost seems pretty standard, but only features 50 unlocks at the moment, which seems pretty stingy to me. Most skins match Call of Duty store prices, which in my mind is asking too much, but this doesn't seem to stop people from buying them. I hope the developers manage to create a strong competitive scene around the game, as I think this will definitely help to keep the game alive. The fact that Xdefiant is free is going to draw in many more gamers than a title that requires purchase, which perhaps explains why Xdefiant seems to have had a strong start. But crucially, I think the developers need to capitalise on this strong start by supporting the game with regular, meaningful updates without taking away from what they've already created. I've thoroughly enjoyed playing Xdefiant. The game has met my lofty expectations and has replaced Modern Warfare 3 as my go-to first-person shooter.